Hi, I'm Neil.
And I'm John.
And you're listening to World of Telly, the podcast where John and I watch every single TV programme ever made in no particular order. And what are we watching this week, John?
We're watching Killer Net.
Killer Net? That sounds fantastic. What is it?
Killer Net is a 1998 four-part drama serial that was shown on Channel 4 and was created by Linda LaPlante.
Should we talk a little bit about Linda LaPlante before we get into the nuts and bolts of Killer Net?
I think we owe it to Linda to do that, really.
I think we do. Linda LaPlante started as an actor, I believe.
Yes, she was known as Linda Marshall. She was kind of popped up on virtually everything, but didn't hang around in programmes for very long. The exceptions to that was she was a series regular in the full run of The Doctors, a BBC soap opera, not to be confused with Doctors, which ran for about 50 episodes. She was in Marmalade Atkins. She was Marmalade Atkins' mum. And she was also in a series of Rent-A-Ghost, playing Tamara Novak. And she was basically the forerunner to Sue Nichols' Nadia Popov.
I knew she was in The Professionals and The Sweeney, but I completely blanked out of my mind that she was a regular on Rent-A-Ghost.
Because she was only in one series, it was probably easy to overlook. And I think Nadia was an almost exact kind of copy of the character. I'm not as well versed in Rent-A-Ghost as maybe I once was.
Did she have hay fever or something like that?
She used to transport herself when she used to sneeze, but then that's what Nadia did as well, didn't she? Because she literally popped off. It was a play on words.
Dear sir and madam, allow me to present myself. My name is Tamara Novak. My credentials. Thank you.
She was in lots of Euston Films things like Sweeney, but she would always basically kind of pop up quite often as a kind of like bar woman or, you know, on occasion prostitute. And I think she got really quite sick of all of this and kind of was bemoaning the fact that she didn't seem to get any decent roles. And that was when, around that time, that she started to get the idea to take up writing, and she got the idea for what became Widows.
Yeah, that was her big break, wasn't it, Widows? I loved Widows when it was out. Was it early 80s, 83?
It was, and she was already quite well known to Verity Lambert as an actress, as Verity Lambert, who was the sort of one of the head honchos at Euston, and also Linda Agron, who was a producer at Euston as well. And Linda LaPlante in later days used to claim that she wrote the script, and when she turned up to talk through the script with Verity Lambert was astonished that it was the Linda that she knew. But actually, both Verity Lambert and Linda Agron say that that's not in any way true. In fact, they kept saying to each other, "Why is Linda Marshall sending us these scripts with the name Linda LaPlante on? She sounds like some kind of Victorian novelist or something." So they found it quite bemusing around that, but they loved the script, and I think they gave her really good practical advice on how to write scripts, but, you know, let her do the whole lot. And Widows came out, and it was a massive success.
It was a huge hit. It was remade in America as both a TV series and a film. That's how popular it was.
The thing about Widows, I thought, right from the start, was the way it was interestingly subverting a lot of those Euston film stuff that had come previously. Because it starts off with a gang of criminals in a van, typical Sweeney style. And of course, they all get, you think they all get blown to pieces. And then it switches to the wives. And it was an interesting way of pivoting to something a bit different. Euston Films have been around for a while, and it was doing that with quite a few things. You know, Out, the Trevor Preston series, again, was subverting some of the sort of norms of those kind of thick ear, running around on wasteland, beating each other up kind of stuff. But no, Widows was great.
So Widows was a big hit for her, but that's eclipsed by the next project that she did, which she's probably most known for, which is, of course, Prime Suspect.
You can't really overplay what a massive success it was. I mean, it was so huge. It had Helen Mirren in it as
Jane Tennyson.
Jane Tennyson, that's right. And so basically Prime Suspect was an absolutely massive hit, both here and in the States. It was Emmy nominated, and then it led to lots of sequels. And at that point, Linda LaPlante went from being a writer to being a sort of not just a cottage industry, but just an enormous media figure.
She was a household name, wasn't she?
She was totally a household name. She was a very glamorous we're talking about it in the past tense. She still is. She's still around. She's a very glamorous person, and she got on TV quite a lot. You had a picture on the back of her many novels that she started to write. She was a prolific novelist, which all sold incredibly well. She briefly got poached across by the BBC to do something called Civvies.
I don't remember that.
Civvies had Peter O'Toole in it. As it implies, it was about a group of people from the army who find it very difficult to accommodate themselves back into everyday life. It was actually rather good, I thought, and rather underrated, though. It didn't seem to go down particularly well.
And after that was something called The Governor.
Yeah, The Governor, I think that ran to 2 series. I don't think it really kind of struck all the notes that that some of the other series did. Linda LaPlante said she'd exhausted what she wanted to say, but it ended on a massive cliffhanger about whether the governor had been killed or not.
Yeah, and the programme we're looking at today comes a couple of years after she finished with that series. I believe she originally pitched Killer Net to ITV, but they turned it down because it was too raunchy.
Yeah, it was later, some of the critics would call Killer Net a shag fest, which seems quite amusing now to me.
It was pure filth.
You can imagine that ITV would want anything from Linda LaPlante, but when she said CD-ROM, death games, and lots of sex, they obviously decided that was a bit too far.
Welcome to Killer Net UK. You are about to plan and execute the perfect murder.
It's interesting how it came about. And there was a quite revealing interview that she did in the Bookseller of all things. Not long before the series came out, Linda LaPlante said that there was the rough idea of doing something like this. And she was talking to one of the people who worked in her office, a young woman. And the young woman was very enthused by it and came up with lots of ideas. And Linda LaPlante said to her, well, why don't you do it? You could write the script. It could be a big break for you. And this woman was obviously very keen on doing it, but apparently just kept asking for a contract. Not unreasonably, you'd say. But she asked once too many times for Linda LaPlante, and Linda LaPlante was speaking to her on the phone and just basically said, well, I've got the contract in front of me, but the sound you can hear now is me tearing it up. You're off the project. And then she went on to do it. And I think that's quite interesting, because you could argue, I think, and certainly lots of the newspaper reviewers did, Linda LaPlante was writing about young people who were, quite removed from her in age, and about technology, and that kind of strikes a wrong note and a false note, which fatally kind of killed the programme in some of their opinions anyway.
Before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of the programme, I think we should probably warn our viewers that we're going to probably spoil this, aren't we?
Oh, I think so. Yes, I have every intention of doing that, yeah.
So where can they watch this if they want to watch it before they listen to us spoil it?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, good.
So it's nice and easy to get. It's actually part of Prime. You don't have to pay any extra for it if you've already a Prime member. It's on in 2 parts.
Yeah, it was originally 4, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know why they did that, although it kind of makes sense, I guess.
I think you can see it certainly falls into 2 distinct chunks, I think.
It's the Artemis 8-1 thing all over again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They could have done it in 3 hours. Who else is involved in this production? The director's very well known to Doctor Who fans. Jeffrey Sachs, most known for the 1996 TV movie with the Pertwee logo on it.
Yeah, amazing career, amazingly long career. He's still very much going, Jeffrey Sachs. He basically started off directing End of Part 1, which was a very good satire series from ITV back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
But then he did Spitting Image, he did The New Statesman with Rick Mayall, he did Clocking Off after he did Killer Net. But I think the most recent thing he did Dalgleish, which was on Channel 5 recently. So that was recently as last year. So he's been working consistently through that time. He worked with Andrew Davis on a few things like Tip in the Velvet. Definitely a varied career.
Should we talk about the cast? I mean, there's loads of famous faces in this thing.
I guess the one to start with is Paul Bettany, who is the star alongside Tam Williams and Emily Wolfe, who we'll get on to.
He'd been in The Bill, hadn't he? But this was his first major acting role.
Absolutely. He smokes for England in it, doesn't he? He really does. It's like there's just kind of like constant chuffing away.
I think he's really good. I think he's great. I think he's got instant star power. You can see immediately that this guy's going to go far. He acts everybody else off the screen, and that includes quite a lot of well-known actors.
Yeah, and I guess his characters also has to carry a lot of the weight of it, doesn't it? I know that in theory, Tam Williams, Scott, is a central character, but Paul Bettany's kind of like the one who's got all the conflict. A lot of the plot kind of depends on him and where it goes.
From the first moment he appears, I think he's in the first scene, and from the moment he appears, he just wipes everybody off the screen, really, especially the so-called main protagonist, played by a guy called Tam Williams, who I'd never heard of before. Had you heard of him?
Only because I'd seen this before, and I knew who his dad was, because his dad, who is also in Killer Net, is Simon Williams, who is, famous from Upstairs, Downstairs and Doctor Who.
Now this is where this makes sense now.
Oh, okay.
Because Tam Williams' first uncredited appearance is in Remembrance of the Daleks as one of the school children. So
right,
his dad must have got him that gig, I'm guessing.
It will be a follow-up to the famous Milgram experiment from 1964, which tried to explain the behaviour of the guards in the concentration camps. Guilt and responsibility. But I want to take it a step further.
He's actually gone on to bigger and better things, even though he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Tam Williams was in the film Spectre, the James Bond film Spectre.
Yes.
He's credited as Moneypenny's boyfriend. He doesn't even get a name. He was also in Emmerdale 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So he's still going.
You can sort of see why he maybe ended up in roles like Moneypenny's husband. Mm-hmm. Because he's, one of the two, I guess, one of the three main leads, and he's not very inspiring in this. And I think, he looks quite a lot like Alex James, doesn't he? From Blur. And but even more annoying than Alex James is, if such a thing was possible.
I quite liked him. Okay, what about the female characters? Emily Wolf. She's a very familiar name. What was she in?
She was in The Full Monty, wasn't she? That was
That's
one of the big things that she was in just before this. She was in Velvet Goldmine. She was in a Hardy adaptation called The Woodlanders. And she'd been in a few things on TV. I have to, now say that I actually knew Emily slightly at university.
Go on, spill the beans.
Well, there's no real beans to spill, and I can guarantee you she wouldn't remember me. Because at university, Emily Wolf was like the star of the Oxford acting crowd. She did a one-woman show called Sex, which was quite something, and that went to Edinburgh. The one anecdote I can tell is more about me, really.
Go on.
Is that I was at the Burton Taylor Theatre and I was helping with the lighting.
Yeah.
And at one point, I was hanging off the lighting rig above a deserted theatre, and Emily and her then boyfriend Dave Schneider from The Day to Day and various other things came in, and I'd heard this rumour about the fact that how they communicated with each other, and they communicated with each other entirely in French.
Oh, right.
And would only speak to each other in French.
How cosmopolitan.
I don't think they even knew I was in the room. I was hanging from the rig.
Could you speak French?
I could understand kind of the je t'aime type stuff. It wasn't like a particularly complex. It wasn't like they were quoting from Baudelaire, but I imagine that might have been next. Slightly more weirdly, she was originally from up here, from Newcastle, because her dad was a famous Wordsworth scholar at Newcastle University, where I work. And his wife, Pamela Wolf, is still around. She's in her 90s now, and she comes to the Friends of the Library events. And I escorted her around somewhere once and said, "Oh, I know Emily." And she was fairly flabbergasted by it, has to be said. So Emily, yeah, very nice. And I think she gave up acting in the end, largely to become a writer.
Did you hear what he said about the game? I don't know what the big deal is.
It's the psychological part he gets a kick out of. You wouldn't understand.
Well, what is there to understand?
I'm trying to study.
God, I could plan a murder and you'd be the first.
The point of the game is getting away with it.
Who else is in this? Jason Orange.
Jason Orange. This is one of the few ways I could tempt Shirley to watch Killer Net, was mention Jason Orange is in it. She's such a Take That fan.
Sadly, he's only in it for, 10 minutes, if that?
Yeah, he's a malevolent DJ, isn't he?
He was used really in a lot of the publicity for the programme, wasn't it? People were describing Killer Net as if it starred Jason Orange.
It was a bit like Artemis 8-1 with all the press coverage, wasn't it, with Sting? Yes. And now it's just like, who thought that Killer Net and Artemis 8-1 would have so much in common with them?
In fact, a few weeks back, he's shown up at my place, kicking the door and looking for her.
Do you know his name?
No. But I know he was a psychology student. Weird kind of bloke. They're all nuts, aren't they? The nutcrackers.
But yeah, there's some others. Zoe Looker turns up, doesn't she, at one point?
That's right, from Footballers' Wives, yes.
Yeah, she's playing a not dissimilar role.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned Simon Williams already. There's Raquel Cassidy, who's probably most well known for being in Teachers.
Yeah, she's in lots of things, isn't she? She's one of those ones. It's funny watching it because there are so many famous faces all looking distressingly young.
Shall we get into the nuts and bolts of what it's about?
It's about 2 students and 1 trainee nurse living in an alarmingly palatial flat in Brighton. It's another thing that's running through this, isn't it? That they're all far too old for the parts they're playing.
They're all mature students by the look of it.
One of them, at least, is supposed to be an undergraduate, isn't it, I think? So it's a bit... Maybe I'm wrong about that. So they're in this palatial flat, and you have Scott Miller, played by Tom Williams, who's a bit of a dweeb. He's good looking. He's got a sports car, which helps. And you got Emily Wolfe playing Susie Scott, the nurse, who's the partner of Joe Hunter, played by Paul Bettany. And they do usual student-y type things where they're complaining at each other for not tidying up the flat. They're racing around trying to get to university on time.
This woman walks into Scott's life. She's called Charlie, or she has several names. That's not her real name, is it?
No, she's got several names, and it's quite extraordinary. The nearest thing I could think to is she's a bit like Anna from This Life, only that's been concussed in some way. There's a strange head injury.
Is it just me, or is she really horrible?
Yeah, she is. There's nothing appealing about her at all, but she appeals for some reason to Scott.
She's very sexually promiscuous, but also has a thing for graphics cards. So they'll be lying in bed after having sex, and then she'll pull out of God knows where a graphics card, and Scott's into his computers, and she makes him install this graphics card into his computer so he can do sex chats online. And I think this is where the genesis of the idea came from. I think Linda LaPlante realised that there was this seedy underbelly, the beginnings of the internet. And I thought when I first started watching it that what we were going to end up with was like Videodrome. I thought it was going to be a program about a guy who gets sucked into this underground sort of dark web snuff movie type thing, but that's not what happens at all, which is quite disappointing.
I think I would have preferred that, to be honest. Yeah, you're right about the seedy underbelly, because in the university scenes, there are loads of scenes in computer clusters where everybody is looking at kind of porn or some kind of gaming, that kind of thing, and then a supervisor comes in and they all switch to their Excel spreadsheets.
It's that very specific type of 90s porn, isn't it, where they're bitmaps and they load in really slowly. I don't know if you remember those days. Not with porn, obviously. I used to download Doctor Who GIFs.
I used to do TV idents, and it used to take you ages for the Anglia night to appear.
Since when have grotesquely inflated mammaries been part of your coursework, Mr. O'Reilly?
Actually, it is a part of my coursework. According to Net magazine, 75% of the internet is used for pornography. I'm just doing a bit of research.
There's quite a lot of raunchy sex in the first episode. I watched it on Saturday afternoon, didn't tell my wife I was watching it. She walked in on me and literally thought I was watching 90s porn. 4:3, really bad resolution. It's quite a niche. I was shocked at how graphic it is, that first episode. Particularly, there's lots of full frontal nudity. It seemed quite edgy for late 90s TV, I thought.
Yeah, and certainly some of the responses to it seemed to indicate that, didn't it? That they thought it had gone too far. And I mean, to be honest, it all sort of dies away a bit after that, doesn't it?
It does. It settles down.
It's sort of trying to get people to tune in next week, I think.
So basically what happens is he gets this graphics card. He starts doing sex chats with this woman in America. Sexy Sadie.
Sexy Sadie.
It's basically like OnlyFans, isn't it?
Yeah, it's strange, and it's because Scott and Joe get tremendously excited by this, don't they? At one point, Emily Wolfe's character comes back and says, "Have you been up all night, kind of drinking or gaming?" And he says, "No, I've been wanking over the whole of North America or something." It's quite.
It implies that they were both masturbating together in the same room.
Yeah, that is the implication. It's not great.
And Sexy Sadie basically gets Scott to purchase KillerNet, which is this game on a CD-ROM. Now, John, I've got to say, when I came into this programme, a few days before I sat down to watch it, we were on a podcast together. We were on Radio 3 Scaro, and you described KillerNet, and you said it involved a devilish CD-ROM. And I expected it to be a supernatural thing. I thought it was going to take him over. It was going to be Stephen King or even Black Mirror. And the other person who ruined this programme for me was in fact Charlie Brooker, because my only memory of KillerNet is a little review that Charlie Brooker gave in one of his programmes. I think it was called How TV Ruined Everything. Is that right?
Yeah.
And again, he makes it sound like this computer game somehow murders people. And that's not what happens at all.
Well, I mean, all I meant was that it is used by the person behind KillerNet to kill people. He doesn't possess people or anything like that. No, that's all I meant by the sort of devilish
Well, I know
CD-ROM.
that now. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say this now. I'm not going to make any claims that this is a hidden gem. It's a competent thriller, and it's pretty good. And I think it deals with certain themes and certain ideas that would have been cutting edge and quite revolutionary back in 1998. She gets quite a lot right, Linda LaPlante.
Mm-hmm.
She obviously did her research. I mean, the terminology that's being used is accurate. The actual computer game itself is also exactly the sort of thing that you would have seen in the mid-90s. It reminded me of that Doctor Who game, Destiny of the Doctors. Did you ever play that?
I never did. Tell me about it.
It's the last performance of Anthony Ainley as the Master. And he's in these full motion video scenes which look exactly like the scenes from KillerNet. And Charlie Brooker claims that the technology being displayed in this program is preposterous. It's not preposterous at all. It's quite feasible, this game that Scott ends up playing. And he says it's magically addictive. That's like saying Tetris is magically addictive. Or any computer game is magically addictive.
Perhaps the most in-depth, not to mention pre-flipping posterous exploration of the menace of computerised video games was Linda LaPlante's KillerNet, a searing 1998 Channel 4 drama exposing the horrendous truth about computerised entertainment. It concerned a floppy-haired student milquetoast called Scott who got obsessed with a bizarre stalking and murdering game, which wasn't technically feasible then, and still isn't now. As well as being difficult, the impossibly detailed game is also magically addictive, and before long, Scott becomes totally obsessed with plotting his cyber killing. And inevitably, because games are sick and wrong, he kills her with a hammer.
Scott becomes obsessed with this computer game, which allows you to plan the perfect murder. And I think the first 2 episodes is mainly about him not going to university and just sitting in his room trying to work out the best method for beating this game.
Yeah, and he also, as part of this process to try and do the perfect murder, he also buys seemingly an entire library of books about murder. And where he finds the time to play the game and read all this stuff, because towards the end when they're trying to hide the books from the police, he's literally got like about 75 books that he's had in the last sort of 2 weeks or so. So yeah, it's interesting and then it gets into a very, I think, obvious nod towards the film Shallow Grave, because he gets his 2 flatmates embroiled in thinking it through as well, and he uses the expertise of the nurse about what would be the best thing to put them in so the body rots down more quickly. There is on the wall of the flat a poster for Shallow Grave, I think. So yeah, it's interesting. It's marginally better than I remember it being, to be honest. And I think some of the bits that are interesting is when he's doing the game and he's failing, a police character comes along, an avatar, and says, "Dear, oh dear," or, "You're Nick's son," or whatever they say. And actually, the avatars are the faces of the coppers who come into it later. So that's quite interesting that you first see them as avatars before you actually meet them in real life, as it were.
Thought she was into flaming.
Slagging people off on the internet.
I'm not putting him in the shit by telling you all this, am I? I mean, he's a friend of mine. Not that close.
What did you say to Mr. Miller?
That she'd done a complete spam on him.
Again, I think when I was watching it, I just kept thinking that Linda LaPlante was right on the edge of something interesting, because there's a sort of subplot that flows through this program, whereas Scott's a psychology student and he's doing a reconstruction of the Milgram experiment, the famous experiment where you electrocute subject, and it's all about people electrocuting other people because they've been given permission to do so. And I thought that the program was going to delve more into that and have Scott in a situation where he was directing someone to commit a real murder in the game itself.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't really do that. And it also plays with the idea of social media before social media was even a thing, in that Charlie is flaming him. That's how they describe it, flaming him on the news groups, which is, an accurate description of the sort of thing that went on back in the 90s. So she's right on the edge of doing a Black Mirror style Videodrome thing. And then I thought, wouldn't this be an interesting program if the computer game had absolutely nothing to do with the murder and it was just a distraction. And it sort of is, but they blow it in the final episode, and we're going to get into spoilers now. There is basically two killers. That's basically the twist.
Yeah.
And the main serial killer is the guy who designed the video game. It's never really explained what his deal is, apart from the fact he's a nerd.
And that's where it really does fall apart, because he is just a sort of barking mad, kind of slightly demonic in the fact that he's impossible to catch, seemingly. There's not much of a motivation that he's got for doing all of this kind of stuff.
It's like a serial killing version of Clive Sinclair, isn't he? Basically. Yeah, it all falls apart for me when they actually bring the real killer in. I thought it had been much more interesting that the computer game was just completely blameless in all this. And what it really does is not so much inspire Paul Bettany's character to kill this woman, but sort of gives him ideas on how to get away with it. And he's the real killer. What's also interesting, I find, about this program is that the police are treated as almost like comedy characters. I mean, you could have written a version of this with Jane Tennyson and done it dead serious. All the police are shown to be completely incompetent, out of their depth, and have no idea how the technology works.
At this point, Scott is their suspect, but they bring him upstairs to the normal police office so he can help them operate the computer, which is obviously not a good thing to do with someone who's your prime suspect. And even the computer expert who's been brought in is complaining that I'm not an expert on games. It is quite funny, and they actually do wipe some of the evidence, don't they, inadvertently?
By accident.
By accident, which is good.
How far have you got?
Having a spot of trouble with the stalking. I keep getting stuck at the shoe shop.
Did you check out the shop opening times?
I thought this guy was an expert. I'm a consultant. Doesn't mean I spend my time playing games. These kind of games require a special mentality. People spend hours trying to work them out. That's the whole point. Personally, I find them extremely tedious and a waste of time. Right, so it's back to the shoe shop, is it?
Some of the bits, they are so ludicrous, is that the police woman, the Raquel Cassidy character, when they're playing the game and Scott is showing them how it works, you have to put in your victim's details. And she goes, I'll put my details in. and one of them says, is that your real address you're giving? As if to say, why the hell would you do that? And of course, what they don't know is that there's a bleeping modem kind of taking the information. Now, I can't remember how some of those games used to work or whether that would be feasible, that people really didn't know that it was kicking into the modem.
I mean, it's feasible. I mean, the only thing that isn't feasible is that it's sort of like a virtual reality identikit thing where you put the person's details in and it spits out quite a good visual representation. It reminded me of the scene in For Your Eyes Only, where Roger Moore does a similar thing. That's the only bit of technology that is preposterous. I think everything else is very, very feasible and definitely fits in with the time that it was made.
So what you end up getting into is that Scott is so furious at being flamed by Rich Bitch, as she is often known. So he goes in and puts her details, because when you win the game, you're allowed to put the details of someone you want to be killed. Obviously not thinking that's actually going to happen to them. But then the evil serial killer guy takes those details and kills them. But of course, in this case, what happens is the big twist. The serial killer is driven into a fury because somebody else kills Rich Bitch. And it ends up being Paul Bettany's character that does that, because they've got a previous history. And it's all quite involved. And again, it's quite good scenes with Paul Bettany towards the end when he has a complete breakdown.
Oh, yeah. It's like an episode of Cracker. It really is that good.
You killed her for real, Mr. Hunter. Not in the game. Was Scott Miller involved? What about Miss Selby?
No, I killed Charlotte. I did.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's mixed, and I agree with you about the Milgram experiment stuff, which I thought was going to be much more woven in, but actually just ends up being a quite funny scene where the police come to arrest Scott while somebody is being pretend tortured in an electric chair. As you say, the police are bundlers. There's some quite funny scenes where when they're trying to interview Sexy Sadie, the kind of chief inspector keeps paying for everything with his credit card.
We haven't mentioned who plays the main copy yet, have we?
No.
Christopher Neame.
Yes, the mighty Christopher Neame.
Brilliant.
Quite like Richard McCabe's DC as well. He's very funny. He's got extraordinary hair. He's very funny, and I really enjoyed in the last episode the bit where his character, McCabe's character, D.S. Colby, meets the guy who's actually the voice of the Killer Net. And there's this bald guy, he's big, and he kind of, you must play the game. It's this kind of voice and all that kind of thing. And he's like a camp northerner. It's a classic jobbing actor who can remember, I was stuck in this funny little cupboard in Soho. And there was this, this little guy who was very good at the game and all of this kind of stuff. It's just very amusing.
I've been trying to remember anything that might be important. But, it's quite a long time ago. I only really remember clearly because it was excruciatingly boring. I had to repeat the same lines over and over and over again. My God, they stayed in my head for weeks. Well, I still remember them. Remember to keep your distance. Please try again.
One of the things I liked was the whole Milgram thing where they have the guy pretending to be electrocuted. Any other drama would have had him be electrocuted for real and make that a twist. And it doesn't do the obvious things that you're expecting. The only problem I have with it is that it falls into this trap of having to have a real serial killer. If there wasn't a serial killer in it at all, this would have been a fantastic, self-contained drama. It's right on the edge of being something special.
And just to say that the guy who was being electrocuted has also become much more famous now. It's Lee Ingleby, who's been in millions of things. I mean, Inspector George Gently, but he was in lots and lots of things throughout his career. He's had a really good career. And he's very funny. He does some great gurning when he's pretending to be electrocuted. As we talked about, it really does fall into sort of two chunks, this programme. The first two episodes are largely about the game itself, and the last two episodes are about the police investigation. And the pivot point of that is the end of part 2, when someone out dog walking or with their kids finds the body of Rich Bitch. And the person who finds it is played by Ian Sharrock, who became quite famous as Alan Partridge's stalker in I'm Alan Partridge. You're a mentalist. It's that one. It's that one. So that's quite a claim to fame. Maybe that's what sent him off the edge when he found the body.
Should we talk about the ending, given that we spoilt most of this programme? I'd like to talk about the ending because I find it quite interesting, and by interesting I mean fucking insane. One of the most interesting things about it is that it's a drama about a serial killer, and the serial killer gets away with it.
He does. I mean, it's slightly improbable. He's kind of trapped at the end of a pier with the police kind of running along the other end of the pier, so he kind of vanishes in a puff of evil. But yeah, we should probably explain that basically the police woman who earlier rather ill-advisedly put her real address into the Killer Net game. And remember that this serial killer is a particularly furious serial killer because he's had one of his victims snatched away from him by Paul Bettany. And basically he stalks her, he puts surveillance devices in her room, and then basically there's a lot of rather cliche bits that happen in it where her colleague, he realises that she's in danger suddenly, and he rings up, but they just miss the call. And then her other colleagues at the police station realise that she's been under surveillance as well. So everyone races as one to Brighton Pier to try and save her, while she is ushered into this very dark, very gloomy, abandoned part of the thing. And again, ill-advisedly decides to have a wander around in there. And then sadly, all we hear from one of her colleagues is a kind of agonised cry as we realise they've got there too late. But there's no sign of the serial killer.
Yeah, they know his name, they know his face, they've got a photograph of him, they know everything about him, and yet he suddenly disappears and makes it all the way to America, where he then starts Killer Net USA. Do you think this was an attempt by Linda LaPlante to get a sequel going?
It's possible, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, most things that Linda LaPlante did ended up with a sequel of one sort or another. So I think she's always got that in mind. Maybe she wanted to sell the series to the States.
And then after that bizarre moment, the end of the programme itself involves Scott standing on top of his palatial apartments. And for a moment, you think he's going to chuck himself off the top of it. But he has a change of heart and instead hilariously throws his computer with his brand new graphics card in it. And it crashes on the floor. And the last shot is this destroyed PC. Now, do you think that was Linda LaPlante trying to make a point?
I think so. I mean, apart from anything else, in terms of health and safety, it's a very unwise thing to do, isn't it? Especially in those days. PCs were heavy-duty things, weren't they? They could have killed someone. Maybe things would be better now if a few more people of his age, a few more men of his age had decided to throw their computer and then they'd taken up watercolours or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to blame the computer, you might as well also blame all those books that he bought as well. I mean, you know.
Absolutely. The ever-expanding serial killer library. that he had, and they tried. It was like they were trying to kind of put them all in bags and take them away, and they were going to take them to maybe, I don't know, bring and buy sale, try and put them to a Boy Scouts jumble sale or something. They could have got rid of them. There were a lot of books.
Of course, he's a psychology student, isn't he? These would be, research, part of his studies. I wouldn't say they were rubbish. Not exactly book at bedtime.
So I came to this programme expecting it to be horrendous. I thought it was going to be preposterous. I thought it was going to be about a middle-aged woman writing about things she didn't understand. And I was surprised about how good it actually was. How did the critics find it, John?
Generally pretty unfavourable. One of the sticks that was used to beat it, I think, was This Life. Because, of course, This Life, which had become a really big hit in 96 and 97, and it really became the sort of biggest TV programme of the day, the one with the biggest buzz about it. And I think a lot of them seem to think it was just like, it's a This Life setup, only the characters aren't as interesting. Virtually all of the critics thought that Linda LaPlante was too old to write it.
I think that's terrible.
Yeah, it is. But and it wasn't just the men, the male critics either. There was one who said LaPlante wanted to do something new and young and exciting, but the result is Mum's rude school play.
I don't agree with that at all. I think she was just ahead of the game. I think she was dealing with something that people just didn't understand.
One comment was LaPlante's ridiculous middle-aged fantasy about internet culture. But actually, I think, as you've said, and you could argue, there's a lot in here about the kind of things that we're still seeing now in terms of male toxicity and that kind of thing, that actually, it hasn't gone away. The interesting thing I saw in one of the newspaper articles was that a software company approached Linda LaPlante's company because they wanted to reproduce the game Lock, Stock and Barrel as an identical game.
With the same guy with the bald head.
Well, I don't know about that. But, they wanted to literally purchase that option of releasing a CD-ROM game that would be called KillerNet, and it would basically be how to murder someone, doing the perfect murder.
I would definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it before. It's not as bad as people make out. In fact, it's a lot better.
Yeah, and it's, as I say, it's easily available on Amazon Prime. So it's go for it, have a look at it. I just think it's fascinating to see where it sat in LaPlante's career. It didn't do very well, and it didn't do very well critically. But I mean, she barely, really stopped. She did so many other things afterwards, that it hardly stopped her in her tracks or anything like that.
She's mainly writing novels still, isn't she? I mean, most of those novels she's releasing now are set in the world of Widows and Prime Suspects. Unfortunately, none of them are set in the KillerNet universe.
No, we're waiting for that. Because, I mean, one of the big things she did, like that started just a year before, which ran for ages, was Trial and Retribution, which was a big series. And so I don't think, because that was taken off in such a big way, I don't think that the lack of success of KillerNet was any kind of body blow for or anything like that from it. But no, well, it's there to be used, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can get Paul Bettany back into it.
Yeah. Did you watch this when it first went out? Because I didn't, and that surprises me, because I was working at a university at the time. I was well into computers. I was one of the early adopters. I was on the Doctor Who news groups. Why didn't I watch this?
I did watch it, but I'm not convinced I watched every episode. It was in a weird time when I was still in London, but Shirley had moved up to Newcastle, and I was trying to get a job in Newcastle. So when I watched it, I didn't have to worry about Shirley walking in on me watching ropey, a raunchy shagfest.
Oh, God, have you been playing bloody computer games all night?
Oh no, we've been wanking off with hookers all the way across America all night.
Okay, John, that's KillerNet, another programme off our list. Before you go, just a couple of housekeeping things. Just a reminder that every 2 weeks, John writes a little write-up of the programme that we've spoken about on Beehive. The link for that is available in the description below. Please make sure you go and check that out. And the other thing is, if you're listening to this on iTunes or Audible or wherever it may be, you might like to know that there's a video version of this podcast available on our YouTube channel, where you get clips of all the programs that we're talking about rather than just listening to us talk. So there's two methods of engaging with this podcast. And if you did enjoy the podcast, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends. Until next time, I've been Neil.
And I've been John.
And you've been listening to The World of Telly.
She'd done a complete spam on him.